Previously on Work to Game.
Read that. Why do we play? So extrinsic value versus intrinsic value. Which drives you? What drives you to play? What feels like a reward? Is the gameplay itself the reward, or is it more about like loot and things like that? What is the reason that you want to log into games? That was a big deal.
It is a big deal. Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about why we play games. And first, we want to just say thank you so much to everybody who's gone over and subscribed to Gaming Kinda. Chris is I think you're just 250 away from that 1,000 goal. So if you guys haven't subscribed over there,
Yeah.
be sure to hit that subscribe button. And also, if you notice in the background by the wheel, Chris is dropping a Ryzen flex. Chris, what's going on? Why is there a Ryzen processor next to you?
So I ordered everything from the cheapest person, and there's been like one piece coming in every day. So I don't remember which piece shows up today, but I'm building a gaming PC.
Oh, it's
So I can finally stream and play games at max settings, max frames.
and you got a 3080, right?
I do. I have a 3080 is among the things on the way. Hopefully, I think that one arrives Friday.
I'm
That's
jealous.
the big one.
I'm excited. I'm all of the things right now. And before we dive into our big topic, the wheel has spoken that we're going to talk about why we play games. I'm really excited to kind of share because I think this is just such a joyful topic because there's so many really positive ways to look at it. You kind of brought up the idea of intrinsic and extrinsic value, like what really motivates you to kind of jump in and play. And I think that's going to be something fun to explore. But if you're also watching this right now, on the day it goes live, we're probably live today. Today is a big day. I'm going to start off with some Final Fantasy XIV, work on the Dragoon controller guide if you want to come give some feedback or, give some thoughts or see how I kind of build out these things. And then at 11 o'clock Central today, Destiny Beyond Light goes live, and so we're going to keep this train rolling. Going to be playing some Destiny together. So hopefully you guys, the second link, after you've subscribed to Gaming Kinda, the second link is for Twitch. We're going to be live over there streaming some video games today. Hopefully you come check it out. And if you have a thought on this video and you want to come discuss it with us as well, let us know why you come play games. Come talk to us about it live. So there's going to be some highlights that we toss up on, Game Club. So it's going to be a fun time. This is the long intro. So if you guys ever want to skip our intros, just note the playhead below. You can usually kind of jump around some of the videos, especially the guides. We've been trying to make sure our guides are all kind of like chaptered out, so that way if you need to get to something special, you can go from there. But I'm going to toss to Chris because Chris is doing the Ryzen flex. Why do you play games, Chris? What is it that motivates you to log in?
So I think it depends a little on game. I think this is kind of like when people refer to introvert versus extrovert.
Okay.
It's not that any one of us is entirely that thing. It's not that everybody wants to be around people every moment of their life, or that somebody else wants to live alone in a forest and never see another human being again. I mean, those two extremes, we typically live somewhere in between. But in gaming, there's kind of two common ways to reward a player. There's intrinsic internal value, and there's extrinsic kind of external value. Intrinsic is the game's just fun for fun's sake. It doesn't give rewards. It doesn't, you just play it. Round-based games do this a lot, especially if they don't have and then extrinsic is something that's more, you're getting a thing, you're leveling. So like MMOs, you're getting experience, you're getting loot. It's why you see such a big push on like giving you cosmetics, giving you achievements, because that external reward, it feels very tangible, it feels very real, and it helps kind of gloss over maybe when the internal game loop wasn't fun on its own, because maybe there's a lull in it, right? It can't be all hype all the time, or maybe it's just not there. Some games use it to actually cover it up, and I think that's its own problem. So I tend to look more for the intrinsic first because I think it's harder to fix. So I think it's a sign of a healthier game. Getting to just good core gameplay that's just fun for fun's sake is actually the harder thing to build, in my opinion. So I think when a game has that, Destiny's a good example of this, where I play Destiny because Destiny's fun. Their season pass never quite grabs me. Their loot system never quite, they never seem to have their rewards tuned just right, in my opinion. But when you hold a controller, I don't, it doesn't feel as good on keyboard and mouse, but when you hold a controller and you have that vibrate, and like I just feel so tactically like aware of what that gun is doing, there's nothing better, and like that's just good core gameplay.
That's something that like Destiny's, like when we've talked even with Bife about it, it's that from the moment you step in and you pick up that first gun and you're like, this feels so good, it invites
Regardless of
you,
them.
right, regardless, again, it invites you to go, I wonder what else there is, right? It invites you to say, oh, and then all of a sudden you start playing and you're like, oh, you've got this really cool gun and it does this really interesting thing. And then your imagination, in a way, the sandbox in a way with Destiny is in how you build out with your exotics and your different perks and how you kind of play around with it. And they've missed the
Right.
mark from time to time, and they've also like hit it. I think the funny thing when we just talk about Destiny briefly here is the ultimate is that it is a roller coaster. Sometimes they knock it out of the park and everybody's excited, and sometimes they just whiff hard and you feel it. And like for the negative YouTuber out there, like it is such a career builder because there's always something to complain about, like with Destiny. Like Bungie will be like, hey, we thought of this thing. 60% of that is a good idea. 40% of it was poor execution. And there you go. And then it's like they tweak it, and eventually, I think one of the things that separates them when you look at them versus like other publishers and things like that is I think their willingness to listen. Like they are actively trying to figure out how to make the best game possible. And sometimes they make mistakes. And I think them leaving Activision has been ultimately a big plus, even though there's still negative impacts of that because you don't have the fat wallet constantly just throwing, like, hey, we'll cover that cost. You can have 3 raids. And so it's definitely, you see a content kind of squish and reduction because of that. But so for me, intrinsic, extrinsic, I love how you think about it. I look at games like in a massively social way. I don't go out to bars. I don't necessarily go golfing on the weekend, and my wife appreciates this. Like she's actually said, like I've gone with my dad, and I've gone with like her dad, and occasionally we've gone on these like epic golf things in which we're out there for like 4 hours. But I don't do that every week. I don't go to the bars. And so COVID in a way never really impacted me. Like it was like my social outlet has always been like logging into Final Fantasy XIV, logging into game night with you guys. And it's about that social aspect. Now, you and I have kind of had this conversation slightly in the background. So this is kind of a public kind of, like, hey, here's what sometimes Chris and I talk about behind the scenes is I have to right now doing, with YouTube and with kids and family and things like that, I look at something that it's got to at least hit 2 or a double dip, right? Like if I'm going to play a game, I look at it as like, is there content that I can make around that game? Because then I'm going to invest in it and have fun with it. Now, the first thing is the game has to be fun. I'm not going to sit here and just boil myself over to like a game that I'm like, this is not fun. One of the reasons why, like, I'm anti-algorithm in the sense of like, I'm not going to be just one game. And even over on Ginger Prime, people have said like, oh, I subbed to you because you covered this one game. Are you still playing it? It's like, yeah, but games are seasonal as well. Like I come in and I'll play a game for a period of time and then I'll move on to another game for a period of time because I think it's a personal goal of mine not to hate video games. And I see that a lot with YouTube creators. It's like you'll get to the point where, like I said, like you'll have this high and then you'll have this low and then you'll have this high and this low. And it's like I like to try to kind of have this more balanced approach to my gameplay. But outside of the content creation, so it's like if it allows me to make like a video or a guide on it and I'm having fun with it, like that's 2 parts. If it hits a social aspect where like I'm playing with my wife or my kids, or we're streaming it or we're playing it as a group, like if there's a social aspect, I'm hanging out in Discord, boom, all of a sudden I call that the triple dip. And so it's like, yes, this is something that I'm excited about. I'm enjoying it because I'm also getting a social outlet. And therefore, that is something that I look, and the reason why I play games. Then you extrapolate from there. It's like, what is the game getting me? What is that addictive loop? Why do I find that game to actually be fun? Why is it that first tier being checked? And it's like, honestly, at the end of the day, like I love filling up bars. Like it's so funny because like as a part of a job, sometimes my job is watching a bar fill up and making sure that nothing fails. RPGs are almost the same way. Like obviously there's like more mechanical stuff, jumping into either a good story like Final Fantasy XIV or really good gameplay like a la Destiny. Honestly, the gameplay in WoW is really surprising me too. Just keeping you guys up to date on that. I tweeted this out yesterday. I'm really enjoying WoW. And so we'll explore more of that, but I'm really enjoying playing that game. And it's like, so there's the fun aspect of it. But again, like all of those games that I just listed, they're also checking off social.
You also spread yourself pretty thin. So I think like external, you have a lot going on, right? I don't know if you guys are keeping count, but Brian's at roughly 15 children. And they're, they're making them 12 at a time now. So they're counting up fast. And then Brian, you work a lot
Mm-hmm.
and you play a lot of different games and you've got a lot of different YouTube channels, and like everything you do, you want to do it times a million.
Yeah,
And
I am definitely that way.
so one of the things that's really hard is like, say, take a first person shooter, right? It's really hard to have good external rewards for a shooter. Most
Mm-hmm.
of it is just you're getting better at the shooter. But if you go into that shooter tired, you're not getting better.
No, not at all.
And so you're just playing, and
Mm-hmm.
you're playing to lose. Like, you're getting nothing for it. Your character's not leveling at all, and you're not getting better. And it's not fun to lose and get killed 9 million times. And so like certain genres really struggle to resonate with you from like just my point of view.
Right, but like this is where I think good design comes in play, because like a good example of what we're talking about right now is Halo 5 versus Gears 5. Halo 5, we get our group big enough and we go into customs, and that's that fun for fun's sake. But that
Right.
also hits
No
that
reward.
right, that also hits that, man, I'm getting tired. And then obviously my KDA just starts to drop because when you get up at 5 in the morning to start working on YouTube content, to start making sure like I'm working out or I'm, doing a stream, like there's like this, by the time 10 o'clock at night rolls around, I'm an asshole. Like, let's just be straight. Like, I am just tired. I don't have a patience level that that I normally do. Like that balance that I strive for at 10 o'clock at night after being awake since 5 o'clock in the morning. Like, I'm just, no, like if it's, no. But Gears 5 from a design perspective is that all that custom games, everything is always checking you towards something. So there's always a bar. Like, that's where I was like, I hope for Halo Infinite that they learn from what Gears 5 does. Like, Gears 5 is always custom or not, like AI or not. They have like a PvP mode that's basically you versus AI. So let's say you got a friend and you don't want to go play against other real people.
Sure.
You can level up the AI so you can have like that right challenge, and then still nothing. You're still checking off those boxes. So in a way, like my hope for the future of Halo is like it doesn't need to be Destiny, but I wanted to also kind of learn for what Gears does, because like that's another thing that keeps me logging into Gears 5, and I do that seasonally. I had a big Gears season over the spring. I'm looking forward to my Amazon just emailed me, happy console launch week, everybody. Amazon just said you might get your Xbox by December 31st. Thanks, Amazon. I'm glad I pre-ordered from you guys. So, but regardless, with Amazon, like in my Xbox, like I plan to spend more time with Gears 5. I want to go back and play through some of my library that I have yet to complete, just because I want to take advantage of those loading times. So there's actually an inherent excitement that I have, because the other side of this whole like kit and caboodle here is speed. And speed is massively important. You bring up the fact, like, I've got a lot of irons in the fire, and thankfully, I think I'm a decent juggler at a lot of these things, and that's where I start to prioritize speed. It's been very hard for me to go from a Shadow PC, GeForce Now, Stadia into a Xbox One or a PS4, because just that loading times,
Right.
like I don't have that. Like I'm like, oh, I have 15 minutes in a GeForce Now Stadia situation. I might be able to like actually get something done, versus like, oh, on an Xbox I'm gonna have to wait a while, and that just ultimately frustrates me. And so that's where it's like I'm really excited about next generation, because I think a lot of people will start to experience that, and I'm really waiting to see if there's a wave back where people are like, I was playing on the Xbox, I went over to my friend's house, he didn't have one, and now I just purchased him one because I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like you go from like loading time to barely no loading time.
Right.
It's something that it does ruin you for like the previous generation. Anyway,
Yeah. So we'll pivot back. So to pivot back on topic, like the other thing that you have to talk about, the other side of this kind of, where do you spend your time, what determines what you play, is how do you decide what fits on like your buffet of games? I think the majority of gamers probably don't play just one game. They may play Final Fantasy XIV as their main game, and then they may have like a phone game that they kind of check in on at work, or they may play 2 MMOs, or they may play a shooter, or they have a console that they just play through single player RPGs. But most of us, at least throughout like a 12-month span, spend some time across multiple games. And so like, I guess then it pivots to, how do you decide what makes a game make the cut? Like, are you just trying to make only the top games, game of the years? Or is each game, are you going in with a more specific focus of like what you want that game to, I guess, achieve for your palette?
Yeah, so this year actually I've had the goal of playing more games, and I think I've definitely achieved that. When I look back at 2020, I have been able to
That's
touch
a lot of games.
I know, and that's like something that was really important to me because for the longest time it's just kind of been like I play Final Fantasy, I play Destiny, like those are the two palette, like the things that I play the most. And this year I've been like I want to play more games, and I've been able to experience a lot of that. Been able to play Phantasy Star, been like, and this is a wide range of genre games. But also been able to sit back and play like more with Julie and just overall like with the kids, been able to play more Mario, and I feel very like satisfied with that. But at the same time, when I'm sitting here looking at a game that I'm curious about, that I'm interested in playing it, I think what you bring up is that it's that gameplay first. It's like what has this satisfying that gets me hooked immediately on its gameplay, and then I evaluate the other systems, right? So as I look forward to the future, like a part of this is like, okay, as we look at 2020 and games getting continually delayed, as I look forward to the future, like I'm evaluating New World under certain conditions, like from a sandbox game, and I do have fears that people will drive that into just a WoW clone. It's like, because it's
Right.
like at the end of the day, like the reason why I think so many WoW clones haven't ever really kicked off is because they're just doing like, why would I go do what I can do over here, like over
Yeah, you're
there?
never going to be a better WoW than WoW. So all the
Right.
WoW killers out there that get lumped into just being like a WoW mold,
Hmm.
they never have something. There's no hook.
Yeah, and so that's where with New World like excites me because it's the visuals, the gameplay, like they're doing a lot of really cool things, and the question is can they ultimately deliver? I don't know. I'm not too worried because I have no ownership of it. So if it delivers a great game, it's awesome. And from what I've played of it, I've really enjoyed it. Same thing with Blue Protocol. Like there's all these different things that I think excite me from a technological level. Like
Right.
sometimes it's like you can, if anybody's not new here to the channel, has been following us for many times, like sometimes I can let my imagination of the technology kind of like go rampant. Like I'm like, oh man, like, oh, they could do this, and maybe also they could do that. Sometimes that's a positive, sometimes it's a negative. So I try to make sure I don't oversell something that doesn't exist, but at the same time be like, yeah, there are some really cool possibilities. And when you go play in the engine, like there's some really cool possibilities that they could deliver with that. Blue Protocol, same kind of thing. It's got that anime MMORPG. One of the things I have found interestingly surprising is that I've been very anti free to play games for the longest time, but with Phantasy Star and some of these other ones, like there is definitely a value that I can go play, I can try it out, and I can decide whether I want to keep going with it or not. And I've actually started to appreciate that as somebody who doesn't have a lot of time. Like the overall investment is low, and then essentially it comes down to either are they constantly going through my pocket, or is it really kind of a balanced approach to monetization? Because at the end of the day, like if I'm having fun with your game, I'll spend money on it. Like I don't have a problem with that. But
I mean, it's definitely the model of the future.
yeah,
It'll
I
be
think
the
so.
model. I think moving forward. And when you look at a bunch of titles that don't appeal to you, it's a
Mhm.
really easy blanket statement to say, I don't play those and they all have this thing in common.
Yeah.
But what happens is a game comes out that you like and it has that thing, and you suffer through that, right? You suffer through the free to play model to play a game you want to play. If Final Fantasy 16 turned out to be free to play, we would all play it.
Yeah.
And then we would complain about that thing. But if that thing turned out to be not so bad, then maybe that removes that barrier. Maybe a few of those other games suddenly become like, well, I'll go try those because it's possible their free to play model is just as decent as the game that got me in there in the first place. Now it's just as possible it's as predatory as you always thought they were, and you just throw that game to the side. Games are so cheap these days to just like throw to the side. Full priced games that are within systems like Game Pass, free to play games where like the barrier to entry is literally just hitting download. It's gotten so easy to hop into those games that I think that's what's allowed me to view like each game as kind of like part of like a pie chart that makes up all the things I want from games.
Yeah.
So like if I want more PvP in my life, I don't need Final Fantasy XIV to fix their PvP and make it a more engaging system. I can just go get that from another game that already does it better. I don't need one ultimate experience to be the game of all games.
A part of me though does want that. Like I mean, if full
It
like
sounds good. It just never happens.
well, and that's where it's like I look at it's an interesting kind of dilemma because over the game landscape, we've got more options, more things to do than ever before. And so from something like a Game Pass or a PlayStation Plus collection, where it's like, hey, here's this value proposition that you have now available. Because yeah, like, okay, you can play all these games or you can't. It doesn't matter. Just like, here's this like offering. In the past, like I remember vividly, like Final Fantasy XI, it's like there really wasn't anything else like it, right? So it was this one thing that I was just, it was a world that I was living in. It was this other life, this other character that had its own kind of motivations and things like that, which is something that I tell you hands down, I still am looking for today. Like maybe that's Final Fantasy 11 remake, you know, that they remaster. I don't know, like whatever that ends up being.
It doesn't satisfy your PvP. You still jump over to Destiny for PvP.
Like from 14 to that, I'm saying that I still believe and hope for a game that is that like and there's
that's what like, Anthem promised to be. That's what New World promises to be. That's
all of them.
Every game,
right? I don't think the thing
is Dangerous promises to get there over a long span of time,
and maybe they will, and maybe 14 will. Like, and to sit here and say like, I wish with 14, yeah, I wish they had better PvP. I wish that, like, when you look at like all the different systems out there, that would be cool. I would love that. I would love to be able to sit here and say 14 gives me more reasons to play it. But the design thing, Yoshi P has stated this multiple times, like to expect that right now would be, I think I would be letting myself down, because Yoshi P himself and whether you agree with it or not, he continues to say, when you're tired of the game, go play something else. Go play something else. And that's the design philosophy behind everything.
Let each artist make their art. And like that is this set of devs' art. They don't want to make the world's perfect shooter. They don't. And even if they have an interest in an action looter where you have something like Diablo, it's better served by setting a blank canvas and starting that piece of art somewhere different than trying to slam it into an existing infrastructure.
I think that's where, when like with Game Pass, that's where I think with like a Square Enix pass, like I think that's where these games will benefit the most from, because I don't need Final Fantasy to be everything. But if you look at Square Enix just as a publisher, they've got all that. They have all these different things that you can go and experience. Like even from the upcoming Outriders, like I'm really excited and interested in that game. If it nails the combat, if it nails the shooting element, then everything else can kind of be tweaked, right? Like you can sit here and say like the loot might be bad at launch. That's fine, you know, or whatever the issue is. But the gameplay is rock solid. Same thing with Destiny. Like Destiny gets you hooked quickly off the combat, off the gameplay loop, and then other things get tweaked and adjust, etc., positive and or negative. But essentially, you're like, the reason why people keep coming back to Destiny isn't they've made a slight adjustment to this percentage of loot drop. It's because, man, that combat's great. Oh, it turns out the reward structure is a little bit more fair or a little bit more balanced, or maybe it isn't, and then you just step away and you come back. And it's interesting that I think Destiny and Final Fantasy have this essentially like this very like almost ecosystem where a lot of players play both games. And I see that heavily. It's like, oh man, I bounce between either they consider one their main versus the other, and then they just kind of bounce back and forth between the two. So it's a really cool, interesting kind of way to think about it. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Well, I think we have I think we've hit time. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up, but let us know why you guys play games. What do you look for in a game? And if a game doesn't satisfy like a certain set of desires or whatever, what do you do to fix that, right? Do you shift your perspective? Do you just play the game differently? Or do you find another game to kind of augment that? Or do you just switch games entirely? Let us know in the comments below. And let's spin that wheel.
Spin the wheel. Make sure you don't knock off your Ryzen. There you
go. It says it's going to be news, guys.
All right. I guess we'll find out if we got a news post coming out.
Which I actually think may be an accurate thing, because I bet our next post is probably something along the lines of responses to Beyond Light or the Scourge event in WoW. I don't know. So I would normally spin it again, but I bet our next post is news.
Go ahead and spin again, and that way we can say that if there isn't a news post, that we'll here's what we're also going to talk about as well, because we've been trying to see about bringing in maybe more of these videos for you guys. It's really up to y'all.
Crafting.
All right, yeah.
So that's this is should crafters be able to craft best in slots? Kind of what what does crafting mean? Where does it fit into the content cycle?
Mm.
Is it a secondary system or is it an extension of the primary? Like, I don't know.
All right.
Let's talk about crafting.
We'll talk about crafting or news or both and all the more.
Probably
so,
news.
guys, keep it locked here. Thank you guys for hitting that subscribe button, that like button, and that share button. Hopefully you enjoy these discussions. As always, keep your suggestions coming. I think we've got a lot of really good suggestions that we're going to get added to that board. So we'll see you guys in the next time for Work to Game. My name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day.
Take care.
This video is sponsored by me, Ginger Prime. Hopefully you'll check out my podcast channel, Ginger Gaming Radio, which we have lots of guests, lots of great conversations, and even more highlights. Links are in the description below. Let me know what you think. Thanks.